Welcome to the Manufacturing Matters podcast with the Council of Industry. Join us as we bring you inspiring stories, interviews, and insights from across the Hudson Valley that will revolutionize the way you think about manufacturing. This podcast is proudly sponsored by PKF O'Connor Davies, a leading accounting and advisory firm dedicated to helping businesses thrive in the manufacturing sector. With their industry knowledge and strategic guidance, PKF O'Connor Davies ensures that manufacturers have the financial insights and support they need to achieve success.
Debbie Smook, co-owner of TurboFil Packaging Machines. Welcome to the Council of Industry podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
It is great to have you. So tell us about TurboFil Packaging Machines. It's an interesting name, and I think it's an interesting little niche in the manufacturing world.
So, the Hudson Valley and also New Jersey near here is a real hotbed of pharmaceutical production and manufacturing. And the making of drugs doesn't just involve the research on the product, but once the medicines are invented, it needs solutions to allow the drugs to actually be packaged and to be closed and, put into vials or dispensers or syringes. And the pharmaceutical industry has so many parts, and we're one part of that industry. We are the ones that make machines that put the drugs into vials and into syringes. And we are the ones that make equipment that make it safer and faster and more accurate to produce a lot of the drugs that you'd see in the pharmacy or in a healthcare facility or even over the counter.
Are they primarily liquids that you're talking about, or is
we do primarily liquids? But as you probably know, many of the liquids are not real liquids. There are high viscosity liquids, and then there are semi-solid liquids. And each of those requires some special know-how and special technology in order to fill properly, let's say without bubbles or without dripping. And a lot of our engineering is done around that. We also work with medical devices, assembly of medical devices, and dental products. A lot of dental products are very high viscosity products. And then some of the solutions are relevant to other industries like the chemical industry, for example, two-part adhesives, or we've done a number of projects in pest control. And we also work in veterinary medicine. Veterinary medicine is another growing area of this whole medical field, although it's not for...
Yeah. So, a typical machine, are these like kind of off-the-shelf products that you have, or are they all custom built? Are they big, small? Where do they fit in?
Almost all of the equipment that we do is custom. We have a few standard benchtop units that may be for filling perfumes or crimping the perfume bottles. But most of what we do are larger machines, very custom. Some of them are custom from the ground up, and some of them we use a platform that we've already worked on and then customize it to this particular customer. Our dream is to produce another machine like we already produced. Right. But it almost always comes in with changes.
With a little bit of difference,
yes.
Right? That's
either a different shape syringe or a syringe that has a completely different cap, or a product that is so viscous that it needs for us to develop a special pump for it that's never been done before. We also do a lot of inspection on products. So one example here is a machine that we are just getting ready to ship. As we speak, it's being packed up. And that is a system for filling and assembling the delivery device for Naloxone nasal spray. Okay. That's the generic of Narcan. And that's a drug that's used to reverse opioid addiction.
Right.
So this is an emergency life-saving drug. And there are multiple inspections at all stages of the filling process to ensure the efficacy of the device. Naloxone has recently been approved to be sold over the counter. So there's a great demand for it all over the country. States are buying it and other entities so that it can be used to save people's lives. This is a great example of how we use inspections Everybody now has a little camera in their pocket, right? That's their phone. And cameras have gotten very smart and use AI to understand what is correct and what isn't correct. And in the pharmaceutical industry, we use them all over the machines and inspect at various stations, making sure that the fill is right, that there are no particulates in the fill, that the stopper is in the right place, that the cap is on. Every stage of the process, especially with a critical drug, has to be inspected.
So how does that work with you and the FDA? I mean, are you like an approved shop, or and what's the compliance? How do you integrate with them and with your customers and the FDA?
Yeah, the pharmaceutical industry is one of the most highly regulated industries all over the world, and for justifiable reasons.
Sure.
But it is really the drug maker who has to conform to FDA requirements.
Okay.
What we do is we support the drug maker, the pharmaceutical company, in meeting the requirements. And that is from the materials that we use to the testing potentially on aseptic process, to the information that's collected and the security of that information. So we go all the way and help the customer meet those requirements, but we ourselves are not regulated by the FDA.
Okay. And but you must like stay up on all those regulations.
We do.
Yeah, I would think
We do.
that's a pretty big part of your role. So discuss, if you can, kind of the process. Let's start first with an existing customer that comes back to you for it. Did the engineering department contact your engineering department for a new machine, or how does that kind of process unfold?
So when we engage a new customer or even an existing customer for a new product, they're basically telling us what they need. And then we go back and we design maybe even a brand new platform to help bring those customer ideas to life. We're in the business of bringing ideas and making things possible, making things, and in many cases, making things that haven't been attempted before. So we have a highly skilled engineering team, very creative, people who are looking for new challenges all the time. I always joke with them that if I didn't bring new machines in, they would certainly be bored. And that's really the case. Everybody from our designers to the assemblers to our machinists, everybody is focused on building something that's tailored to the customer's needs and to run this particular kind of syringe or device properly, effectively, accurately, and with very few rejects.
So company's been in business 20 plus years, is that right?
So we are just celebrating our 25th anniversary.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Thank you. We're really a mom and pop shop, right? That's grown from the ground up, just like our machines. We've grown it in terms of customers and revenue and employees. But at the end of the day, we're really dependent on engineering, right? There's no substitute for good engineering in an area where the machines have to function basically perfectly, because you can't have mistakes when you're manufacturing something as important as drugs.
Yeah. So in those 25 years, there must have been huge changes. I'm imagining your first machine that you built is probably still working, probably still out there cranking away. But okay, I didn't know that in advance, but I just kind of assumed that about you guys. It's just reliable. But the changes, talk a little bit about the quarter century of innovation that's going on.
So changes, there have been changes internally and changes in the market. Internally, we've grown basically from one person, who's Ellie, my husband and partner, who started the business, basically in somebody's machine shop, to build a machine for one customer that needed something. And now we've grown to a full organization. We have a facility here in Mount Vernon. We have about 12,000 square feet, which is, it's not huge, but when you walk in here, it's almost like when you're walking into Oz. You walk in through a door and you see, a little bit of inventory. And then when we're all through the place and you see the machines running and functioning. It's like everything has come to life and is in color.
That's cool. I love that description. Now I really want to go. Just literally open the black and white door and get into
Right.
Munchkinland.
In Munchkinland, yes. But we're not in Munchkinland here. We have really talented engineers. So also we started in cosmetics and personal care.
Oh, okay.
And at the time, I had my own job. I was working in consulting, but I have always been in the medical products area. And when we saw that the company was really starting to grow, I changed from my part-time status to full-time status here. And at that point, we started looking for more pharmaceutical customers. And it was very difficult at first because the standards are much, much higher. And we had to change everything about the machines, from the cosmetics of it, from the cleanliness of it, from the components that we chose, to the documentation and to the approach to the customers. Pharmaceutical customers are very professional and they're part of a regulated industry. And so we need to support them. And it took us a few years until we really were able to meet the standards. The other thing, as I mentioned before, is automation. The machines that we were building originally had some automation, some inspections, but that has moved drastically to fully automatic machines, higher speeds, and full inspections, automated inspections with data that's supplied to customers so that they can look at statistics on their runs, they can keep records, they can dispense with hand recording pharmaceutical batches.
Oh, that's great. So you mentioned that you were part-time consultant in this world. And do you have an engineering background? Is it a business background? How did you get here?
So I went to school for electrical engineering at Tufts University at a time when there weren't a lot of women in this field. But I was always a math science person. And I asked my father, what should I study? And he said, how about engineering? And I said to him, what's that? He said, well, you plan things and design and work with things. And I thought that was good. So I went to engineering. I found that while it was all very interesting, I needed some people contact, much more people contact than I got in my internships in engineering. So after a couple of years, I went to the Wharton School for my MBA, and I kind of found my place there. I worked for a couple of medical device companies. So I worked in the industry for a company called Datascope in New Jersey and Pfizer, which at the time had a medical devices division. And I also worked interspersed with that. I had long stints in consulting, also in medical products. So our clients were big pharmaceutical companies through to little startup medical device companies. And that got me a broad exposure to the industry. And it was also a ton of fun.
You mentioned being one of the few women in the engineering program at Tufts. That whole experience. I mean, I really can't fully understand what that's like, and that work-life balance and that motherhood, business career, particularly in that math, science, engineering world. It just seems extra difficult.
Thank you. I actually never found it hard to work in an environment with men or women, as long as people were professional.
Okay.
And everywhere that I've worked, I've been absolutely fortunate to work with top-notch people.
That's great. That's great. I assume that you kind of tried to bring that. I mean, you obviously are very proud of your engineering team. That comes through very clearly.
And not only the engineering team, also our assemblers and our machinists. Every one of them looks at the machine as his creation. And I say his because it's just me and men.
Their creation. Yeah, that's a great culture. I mean, how do you build and maintain that culture where people really care about their job and then the products and where they fit into it?
I think the first stage is in the hiring.
Hmm.
I have a little hiring trick that when I bring somebody in for an interview, if they walk straight ahead and don't look left and right, they're probably not for us.
Okay.
But if they walk and they look like they can't keep their hands off the machines,
If they
that's a
look
good
like they're in,
start.
if they feel like they're in Oz, then you're
That's
happy
right.
with them.
Then that's the kind of person that we need.
That's a great trick. That's a great trick.
And we like to make this still like a family place. We have a nice kitchen lounge area that we just finished. We celebrate people's birthdays.
Hmm.
I bake cakes for everybody
Wow,
on their birthday, yes.
that's great.
And we look out for people and, hope that that's enough to keep them here, along with the challenge. And that's probably the most important thing. These are people who like challenge. As long as we keep them challenged and learning, then they stay.
So how many cakes do you have to bake each year? How many people do we have working there?
We have 18 cakes.
Okay, that's a good
Every
number.
once in a while, we have to double up because we have a
Okay.
few people on the same week.
Okay. Okay. I was going to say that's manageable when you get to be, around 90 or 100
Right?
people.
You
That's going to be
can't,
a
I
different
could
world.
not possibly do that and do the rest of the work here. And we have a local dog, our
Oh, very
TurboFil
nice.
dog, yes, who works here every day, and he eats lunch with the guys. He has his jobs.
All right. Awesome. That definitely makes for a pleasant work environment for sure. So that kind of begs the next question. What are the opportunities that you see, and what are the challenges that go along with those?
So we have some really nice platforms, machine platforms right now, especially this nasal dispenser machine and
Honestly, that
system.
sounds like a really great opportunity. Also, an interesting technology.
It's interesting technology, and this is an area, I believe, where we're going to see growth. The manufacturer of these devices says that this is their largest pipeline. So we have also not only automatic machines, but we have semi-automatic machines for this device.
We hear about nasal delivery of drugs and
Yeah.
vaccines and working towards that with COVID we're all paying attention to that. So is that
Right.
like kind of
That's where that's going. They're
Okay.
talking about insulin and many other drugs. You can see if you look at the FDA submittals, you can see that there are many drugs being submitted for nasal delivery.
So that's an
So
opportunity for you
that
guys.
is a big opportunity. And part of the challenge there is just making sure that people know who we are and what we can do. Another area where we see growth is in pre-filled syringes.
Mm.
That is an area of growth in the industry. And so we're growing along with that. And we're one of only a few companies that does that well and does that for custom types of products.
Gotcha. And so what are the challenges? I mean, we've talked about workforce for sure on our Westchester manufacturing task force
Yes.
calls and everything else. Does that continue to be a challenge?
I would say that workforce is our greatest challenge. Finding the kinds of people that we need here. We are always looking for engineers with experience. We are always looking for assemblers or for people who can come in and know how to troubleshoot a machine,
Yeah.
right? That's you design the machine, you make the parts, you put it all together, and nothing works the first time right out of the box, right?
Right.
It turns out that the components maybe are not exactly as they were in the drawing, or they have a little bit of flashing so they don't feed, or the product turns out it changes in viscosity over different batches, or somebody made mistakes in the design. So there's a lot of troubleshooting, and we tune the machines to the products when there are different components. So sometimes there are 3 or 5 or 7 different sizes of syringes or jars. Each one has to be tested and tuned because it has to work perfectly. We have to have a safe machine, safe for the operators to use, but also safe for the components and the products, and a machine that's accurate and has very few rejects, that does the job for this customer.
Yeah, and that troubleshooting skill, I mean, that kind of goes back to what you were talking about somebody that is interested and has ownership of the machine and is
And knows how to think.
Yeah, right, and wants to like
One wants to.
literally wants it to work, right?
That's right.
Why doesn't it work? I want it to work, and that's why I need to figure out why it's not working. Yeah, it's a challenge, and that's not everybody's personality for sure. So, what you mentioned about 12,000 square feet, is that right?
Yes, we have 12,000 square feet. We were at 7. We took about 5,000, let's say, about a year ago. And so now we have a much larger and more suitable space for our assembly area. And we have space for inventory. It's not all over the place anymore.
Oh, nice.
We've gotten to be much more organized, and we have space to hire additional people and build additional products as the need grows and as the demand grows.
And actually, kind of a final question there on that. Is the workforce consistent? I mean, do you get big orders where you need to bring people in, or is that not really practical?
No, we have a stable workforce. They're here all the time. We've actually never laid off anybody. Even during COVID, we worked through, although we reduced some hours for a period of time. And it's very important to us that once we have somebody here trained, that we keep them. And we do use outside consultants sometimes if we need it, but we don't bring on people temporarily and then let them go. They come here, they become part of our family.
Gotcha. Well, on that positive note, let me say thank you. Really enjoyed our conversation, learned a lot about TurboFil, and thank you.
Thank you, Harold. This was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Manufacturing Matters, brought to you by the Council of Industry and sponsored by PKF O'Connor Davies, accountants and advisors who understand the unique challenges and opportunities in the manufacturing sector. We hope you gained valuable insights and inspiration from today's discussion. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review on your favorite podcast platform.